Hey guys, I'm your host David Brear and welcome to Fintech Insider On Air episode 20. Man, we did it. Thanks so much for joining us last week. We had a bunch of people joining us live and more afterwards as well. So if you didn't catch episode 19, myself and Sam Moore were over in the US in New York. So head over to 11FS's Twitter or pop over to YouTube and catch that episode. Really good stuff. This week, I'm back home in London, and this time we're going to be talking about women in financial services, which is a topic that, is on the tip of everybody's tongue. We're going to be doing this with Tracey Davies, who is the president of Money 2020. So thank you very much for coming in.
You're very welcome.
How's it going?
To be here. It's good. We're 5 days from the show opening in Amsterdam, and we're excited.
Is it sort of last minute kind of putting everything together and all of the bits in the people laying down carpets in Amsterdam? I imagine right now, yeah.
Yeah, they haven't started yet. They
okay.
start Friday. Don't worry, we're on time.
Fine.
We're not late.
That was planning.
Right. We're all beautifully on time. But yeah,
Very
live
good.
events always have a little bit of adrenaline as you go into them. But
and
we're all good.
We're really looking forward to it. We've I know the 11FS team are out there en masse this year, which is awesome. So I'm really looking forward to getting into it. Yeah. So the subject matter of this week, as we said, we're going to be talking about women in financial services, which is a point where I'm like, am I pro women in financial services? Is this like some weird rant David's going to go on? But really it's about what are we going to do to try and address some of the inequalities that we're seeing within the workplace, particularly within the financial services. And there's been a lot of talk going out there about what can be done and how things can be changed. But really some statistics just as we get in. There's less than 30% of the UK fintech workforce is female, which is kind of a terrifying stat for fintech, which, in startups, this is things that can be addressed. Only 17% of senior fintech roles are held by women, and just over 5% of fintech founders are women, which again, there's lots of talk about investment and investment going to men over women. I thought there was a really interesting one. Generally in FS, the number of CEOs named John is higher than the number of female CEOs, period. Which, if anybody is going to be naming a kid, just equal up the odds, call them John. It seems like a good career choice, if nothing else. And this is terrifying. Like, why are we in this situation? Why do you think we're at this point where there's such an imbalance?
Well, I don't think it's just financial services. It's easy to sort of, I know we're in that industry and we're looking at, there are many industries. Financial services is not the only one.
Yeah.
And, you referenced some UK stats there, but it's pretty much global. You were in the US last week. The US is particularly challenged in this area as well. So it's not just a financial services problem, it's a societal problem, but it's playing through. But it does seem, in some of the older industries, financial services, legal, it does seem to be pretty entrenched, and it is seeming to be quite hard to shift. So I think it's all the traditional reasons that we have an imbalance, but it seems that the financial services seems to be a bit of pace to change it now, I'd say, over the past 2 years, and we're seeing some really big breakthroughs. If you've seen the stuff from PayPal, and they're saying that they are absolutely gender equal in pay. Accenture in North America, I know, are doing a lot. There are a lot of companies. Citi came out recently in the US, I think Bank of America. There's tons of organisations putting a ton of effort in. So we feel it's changing, but it's the same reasons that other industries. It's just societal, traditional problems, but we can't use that anymore. Yeah. We have to change where we are at, because still, 217 years until the pay gap equalises feels a bit of a long time.
It's a long time to wait, isn't it?
Yeah,
I have to say.
It's feeling a long time.
It is. It's an interesting one because, like you say, it's there are so many different organisations talking about it.
Yep.
Really big companies in various different guises. But it feels almost CSR. This feels corporate social responsibility. It doesn't feel like we're seeing enough real change happening. And like you say, there are people who are creating more quota-based for senior management. Yeah. But I guess it's really, it feels like there's enough talking now. It feels like fundamentally we should be in a situation where we're acting more. Yeah,
I think there are some companies that are CSRing it, if you like, and maybe maybe call it lip service. There's definitely some companies doing that. But I think
I don't know if you saw do you see the NatWest apologies from the male bankers type thing to women over the last 30 years, and it felt sort of almost tone deaf to me. Rather than taking out a 3-page ad to talk about it, do stuff.
Yeah, well, I think there are organisations that are doing a lot. So if you, what we know, the biggest the thing that can have the biggest impact is setting goals, and the way you set financial goals, and the way you set KPIs about performance, number of customers, engagement, all of that kind of stuff. You've got to set proper goals that have reward and penalty if they're not hit as an organisation. And it is the organisations that are doing that. And, you know, PayPal did do that, Accenture, I know Citi, there's lots of organisations referencing some of the American ones, but there's a lot of companies globally doing that. And I think what companies who really want to make that change know is that it has to come from the top down, it has to be really role modelled by the board, and they have to set goals and they have to hit them. And I think if you get that, you do get the shift, and you're seeing shift come through. So I think it has moved in a lot of organisations now out of the CSR bracket, because I think companies see it as, you know, there's going to be a talent gap, and they've got a lot of talent sitting there that they need to unlock. And, you know, they know that they're not going to attract the best talent if they don't have the best stats. And we now have a culture, and we have a government here of publishing stats, whether there's obviously it's not perfect in terms of some of the gender gap stuff that's being published. But when you publish and there's transparency, then stuff happens. Yeah. It's when you're sort of talking about it, and when it's good enough, we'll publish our data, nothing happens.
Yeah, so, and I guess, like you say, the pay gap data has really, I mean, in the UK particularly, has really sort of highlighted some of those issues, haven't they? Particularly for some of those big organisations. And like you say, while I'm really aware there are a lot of people sort of doing things in the background, you know, how much of this is almost I don't feel like this is going to be fixed in our generation. I think that's the sad thing. It kind of feels like actually the problem, and having sort of had, I always kind of I like talking about this, but also I'm always really quite terrified about talking about this, just because I know I'll say something wrong and somebody on Twitter will have a go at me. But being in a situation where I'm a white guy, having an opinion on actually the things that we need to do to fix the inequality that's actually happening from a workplace perspective or a pay perspective, I'm always really nervous about, if I'm honest with you. But it feels like, for me, this isn't a, hey, women in financial services, what are you going to do about it? This is like everybody's problem, right? Yeah,
and I think it's bigger, and we're focusing on gender, but it is bigger than that, because fundamentally what it is about is really about businesses reflecting society. And we know that businesses that are more inclusive, because again, you know, like you know, oh, well, she's a woman running Money 2020, so she's going to talk about the women thing. And actually, it's broader than that, because it is about business success. And there is lots of opportunity for businesses, and, you know, it is a very competitive landscape out there. And we know that the businesses that are doing the best are inclusive, and it's because they understand their customers, often because they have that balance at all levels. So there is a business imperative. Of course, you know, there is, you would argue, a moral reason for it in terms of, you know, everyone having equal opportunity. But the business case is just fact, and time again, it's sort of, you know, like you, there's a sort of bit of frustration of, well, if it's so obvious, why is this so hard to change? What I would say is I do feel in the conversations I'm having with senior men and women that there does feel like there's been a shift in the past 18 months. Look, whether it's going to take another generation, I hope not. You know, I have a 17-year-old. I don't really want it to take another generation, because I kind of expected this to be dealt with when I was leaving college, and now here I am, you know, a few years on, and we still have it. I do think there's been a real shift in the past 18 months. But it is a pretty embedded issue, and it's going to take time, and it is going to take a lot of work. And to your point, you know, this isn't a women's problem to solve. There's a lot talked about women helping other women, which is absolutely critical. But, you know, we hear a lot about the importance of men as change agents, and certainly in some of the programs we do, you know, we have men mentors, female mentors. It's really important, but it is a broader societal problem, not just a woman's problem, and not just a financial services problem.
And it's I guess the hard thing I personally find with relating is it's difficult to be in a situation where you suspect that anybody would have treated you any differently throughout the course of my career because of my gender. Do you know what I mean? I struggle with that so much. And maybe they have, but I'm a white dude, and I'm so...
We almost certainly will have done on the statistics.
I mean, sure, but I guess I'm weird enough in another, like, I think I've been mistreated because I'm a millennial, but I'm just like, you know, out of there in terms of what people have mistreated me for. But it's one of those things that it's almost the obscurity, you know, the absurdity of it in my mind, that actually people make decision about how they talk to people or how they act. But that's my point of view. And actually, I know that when you go to a bank where people have been there for 30 years, the conversation that I had with Alison Rose, the CEO of Deputy CEO of NatWest about this was, she didn't feel there was necessarily a glass ceiling for women, but at some point she just realised there was no other women around her.
Yep.
And actually, you can call it any other variable. You can call it, effort, or it might have just been bad luck or whatever. But the reality is that's happened in pretty much every corporate, everywhere, not just in the UK, but globally. I always thought Alison's point was really solid, which was this isn't, and this is why personally I feel like actually it's not a thing in our generation that will dramatically change, but it's one of the, and sorry for your daughter on that one, but it's almost a thing of education process so early. If we're treating, there's so many studies that look at, girls are encouraged to go into certain classes and boys encourage this, and reinforcement of win at all costs with guys, and reinforcement of dolls and pretty things for girls, and it's this sort of kids creation of this divergence of what people are expected from that actually then leads them to have very different expectations of actually standing up and going, I don't believe in that, or being more risk-taking in this space, and that's sad because if by the age of, my daughter's 5, she's definitely not watching this, but hello Ivy anyway, then by 5 people are entrenched with what they can and can't be in life. That's a really sad reality, and that's the thing for me that needs to change.
Yeah, and well, I'm not going to lecture you as a parent, but obviously as a parent, is it Ruby? Did you say Ivy?
Ivy. Yeah.
So,
bizarrely, her best friend is called Ruby. That's weird.
There we are, freaky. But I think, we are seeing that, that parents are challenging that. This is you're right, it's a generational issue in terms of things that happen at school, the subjects that girls seem to get, persuaded into. But there's so much going on out there. So I remain relentlessly positive. I do think there's been a shift in the past 18 months. Whatever's been the cause of that, there's a lot of talk about the Me Too and how it brought into the public domain, whatever, there are different views on that. I do think there's been a shift. And I think there's been a shift in the expectation of women as well. And I think there is, there is a lot more asking and understanding there needs to be a brave moment where you have to put yourself forward, not wait to be asked, and there's all of this kind of good stuff going on. So for all of the stats that you read out and we know, I do feel more positive than I maybe would have felt a couple of years ago. I do think there is a shift, and I do see some great stuff from organisations who I think genuinely really want to change and are really putting some great initiatives in. So I'm going to stay on the positive side of it, because otherwise it's sort of, what's the point? You just get glass. I think we've got to stay positive and we've got to keep pushing for it. And I think raising the awareness of it, and how can it be acceptable that it's 217 years to change a pay gap? I mean, that just doesn't feel sort of right in any world, I would say.
Very much doesn't, no. It's interesting, like you say, of other industries. We are, if you look at people like yourself, people like Alison, Visa, Microsoft UK, actually there are more female coming to the fray in terms of running these organisations. It will be interesting to see if actually within those organisations the change happens lower, does that change from a leadership perspective ripple down essentially? Yeah,
and I think, yes, I mean, I think it has to if we really want change. And I think there is a lot of pressure up as well. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but, we run a programme around this area, and I speak to a lot of women who are a bit further down those organisations, and there's a lot of pressure up from them as well. So I think it has to come from everywhere. Yeah. But we have to keep coming back to the, why does it matter? Well, we've talked about the societal stuff, but, businesses are more successful if they have different opinions around tables, whether that be the office table or whether that be the boardroom table. And so ultimately, there is a real business reason for this, and businesses who are smart really get that. And I think for this industry where there are talent gaps and shortages, there's so much growth opportunity. There is a limited talent pool, and if you want to win that talent, you really are going to demonstrate. You'll need to demonstrate that you're serious about that. And I think that's where we see some of the really world-class companies who really know that if I absolutely believe they believe it, but they also know they're going to lose out on talent. And so I think if you come back to that, and that's what the focus should be really about how organisations can shift. But no one is saying it's easy to do.
And I think that's, to your point, the talent in different areas.
Yeah.
Almost from an engineering perspective,
Yep.
really hard. Like as somebody who, we're hiring a lot of engineers, just saying go to 11FS/careers. Then actually being in the situation where you can find female engineers is a really difficult thing to do. And almost like I think there's a premium. Yeah, they're definitely out there, but I think there's almost a premium now for female engineers over male engineers for equivalent skill sets, because actually they're in such shortage, and actually people really are proactively trying to address that balance within their teams.
And they are out there, but you might have to, it might take a bit longer to find them. And Sally Crawchet she was talking about how, she sends people back and they come back and say, I can't find this, that or the other. And she sends them back and they find it. Yeah. And so I think, it is harder. You're right, it is harder. Because there is definitely less. But there are, I think the graduates coming out are now 50-50, certainly in maths they're 50-50. So they're coming out, there is something going on there. So I think it is just about being focused and, again, it's about publishing the targets and setting the targets, because if you really set that target and you don't deviate from it, then it tends to happen, or that's what certainly the organisations who do that say. All
right, so we've got public targets, it's a boardroom problem we need to invest in, but there's an educational thing that we need to do, and parents have a responsibility as well.
Yes.
Oh man,
all of that.
I mean, this is gonna.
But it's worth it.
Exactly. This is gonna take a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it in terms of doing. Let's maybe move on then from this to. I mean, you've got a few days left until you must be flying out to Amsterdam pretty soon, right?
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you guys feeling?
I think we feel, it's our second year in Amsterdam. So last year was our first year after we moved. So it's our second year. We love our new home at the Rye. And we're super excited. Show's looking good. Speaker lineup's looking fabulous.
I think you've got a big game to beat from last year. It was a pretty impressive show.
But
so
it's always, that is always the case, right? Because you always have to make every show better every year. You can't settle for, we'll just make it as good or a little less good. So, that is what you do when you work in events. You have to raise the bar. Again, customers expect it. They particularly, I think, expect it of us. And, well, look, I haven't delivered it yet, but we're really confident in the show next week. It's looking great.
What are you most looking forward to in the show?
I always look forward to the keynote stage. There are all of the speakers. There's fabulous content going on across all of those stages. But that opening moment on that stage, where the film runs, is always a really great moment. I think there's some really interesting speakers, as you would expect. I think you're making an appearance on our main stage, I hear, interviewing one of our big keynotes, Patrick Collinson, which I think is hot off the press.
Yeah,
it's an exclusive.
I'm very much looking forward to that. So that's going to be a real honour. Those guys have done amazing things. So looking forward to it.
I think that's going to be a big moment. Stripe is always, a really interesting company, and people always want to hear from them. We've got Patrick Gauthier from Amazon, Connected Commerce, the next generation of voice commerce and what that means. I think people are fascinated. And then we've got Alipay, always, people are always interested in what's happening. OVO, I think there's some really interesting businesses. Martha Lane Fox coming up on the final day, a legend in, certainly in the digital world. So I think there's a lot of, a huge breadth. And Lindsay Argalis from Santander, actually from SoftBank. I mean, there's a lot of interest in SoftBank. Yeah. So there is always something for everyone. So I'm looking forward to that. The food festival is back on the Monday night, the opening. I know that went down very well last year.
That was amazing last year, oh my God.
And so we've reprised that. And the street party on Tuesday night as well.
Very good.
We're taking over the street takeover. So, that combination of learning and networking in a fun environment.
Have you got something the following weekend? Have you got a real long holiday to relax after all of this? Because this, how much?
Yeah, I've got Las Vegas in a few weeks. No. Well, they take a year to plan because you come off site and you're thinking about. We do have a little bit of a breath. The team will have a rest. But then, you start, the juices start flowing about what can we do and how can we do it differently. So, we pretty much start planning straight away. Yeah. They take a full year to plan and we get going and off we go. But we do have a small matter of Vegas in October and China in December and
It's amazing.
Asia again. So, you know, it goes on, but it's great fun. I mean, it's a fabulous event.
Well, and people don't see all of that work that goes in behind the scenes as well. You know, knowing a bunch of your team, like you say, literally the minute the doors close on the last one, then you're thinking about next year again and who you can have and the running of it and the community and everything around it. So it's a real an amazingly well-oiled machine at this stage in terms of what you're doing. But we're really, really looking forward to it. So looking forward to catching over there. Okay, that's probably all that we have time for this week. So Tracey, where can people kind of get in touch with you and find out more?
With me personally or about Money 2020?
I mean both.
Okay, well you can go to money2020.com and find details on all of the shows, including the Europe show opening on Monday. Me, I use LinkedIn. I know you're all Twitter files, aren't you? But I'm a LinkedIn kind of girl, so you can find me on LinkedIn and you can message me there for anything.
Wonderful. You can find me over at David Brear on Twitter. And thanks so much for tuning in this week, guys. If you want more insights like this but don't want to see my face because I understand the horror of that, then head over to iTunes and find Fintech Insider podcast, all of the good insights without the horror of the face. It's available on all your favorite podcast providers. If you want a topic to be discussed on air, well, just hit us up over on @Fintech Insiders on Twitter, or feel free to drop me an email on david@11fs.com. Last but not least, we're going to be out in Money 2020 in Amsterdam this year, so come and say hey. There's going to be lots and lots of great speakers as talked about, and lots of fun things happening as well. I believe there's a Brear hunt. More on that soon. See you later, guys.
Thank you.